T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. All three engines up and burning. 2, 1, 0, and liftoff.
Coach on Fire Radio.
Hi, everyone. Welcome again to the Greatness Movement podcast. I'm your host, Kenny Weiss. I'm a life coach, speaker, author, and founder of the Greatness Movement based here in Phoenix, where we guide you to become the greatest version of yourself. For those of you that celebrate, happy Easter, happy Passover. I have to be honest, I'm not quite sure of all the spiritual and religious salutations, maybe is the right word. But if this is a big day for you, I hope it's been wonderful with family, and however it is you worship or celebrate today, I hope that's been great for you. Today we're going to be talking about belief. It's kind of funny, you know, when it was in a conversation earlier this week with somebody that they were really struggling with believing in themselves, and been reading books and everything, trying to find a solution. And I was like, yeah, it drives me crazy. I went through the same process. And anyway, I was like, God, I need to do my podcast on that. I've never talked about how to believe in yourself. And then I found it maybe it was my own spiritual experience of considering the weekend with Easter and all of its significance with belief and faith. It's kind of appropriate, I guess, that this weekend I'd be doing my show about how to believe in yourself. But this holds true with anything, whether it's a faith, believe in a God, or, any type of belief. The process I'm going to discuss, it's exactly the same. And, I know for me, belief was, it's something we all struggle with. Let's face it. We all are worried about the future. We want to know, we want to believe it's going to turn out, even whether that's a spiritual thing of, what's going to happen after you die, or should I believe in this person? Which really, when you're thinking about relationships, that really comes back to, should I believe in myself? Because am I picking the right person? We make it about, should I trust and believe this other person? Well, really what we're asking is, should we trust our own judgment? Because we can't be inside everybody's head and know exactly who they are, regardless of what they say or do. And so ultimately it comes down to a question of, do we believe our own judgment? And so belief permeates our life from the moment we're born, and we start to gain a level of consciousness and understanding of the world. We all, it's a human condition that we all struggle with belief. And I know I did for years. I played a lot of sports, which is all about believing in yourself. Do I think I can come through at a critical moment? And, I played hockey, and I was a goalie. So could I make the save? And played pro golf too. So can I hit the shot, which I didn't in golf. I was much more successful at hockey. And I struggled with belief. And, I read tons of books on it, and would listen to podcasts and everything. And I would get inspired. That's the best way to say it. I would get incredibly inspired by the podcasts or the books, and I'd feel a sense of, I can do this. The problem was, as I look back on it now, every single book or podcast I ever saw, all they ever did was tell me wonderful stories of how people wanted something in their life or wanted to figure something out. Their life was a struggle. They couldn't figure it out. And then, poof, one day they believed in themselves. Like, I hear it all the time. People are like, come on, you got to believe in yourself. If you're an entrepreneur, business, that's a big one. If you're an entrepreneur, you got to believe in yourself. Athletes say it all the time, got to believe in yourself. Well, in all those books, all those podcasts, other than saying you have to believe in yourself, I never heard anyone to describe how you do that. Like, how do you create belief? And then you get into the argument of which comes first. Confidence, like, do you have to have confidence first, or do you have to see an outcome to have confidence in yourself? So in other words, like when it comes to business or athletics, if things start going your way, do you all of a sudden gain confidence then, and that creates belief? Others would say, no, the confidence and belief is what starts things going your way. And so that was always the discussion. And it drove me insane because I'm like, it literally felt, with all their stories, that somebody had just touched them, like they were touched by the hand of God. And all of a sudden they believed in themselves, and everything they had wanted and dreamed of and manifested had just happened miraculously. And that drove me insane because now it's out of my control, right? I'm waiting for that hand of God to bless me with belief. It was always like, literally, I can't say it enough. I have yet to find a person in this line of work, whether they're, the big name speakers, you all read their books and go to their events. They've never explained it. And so it really came to a head to me 2 or 3 years ago where I was like, that's it. I was ticked off. And so I really started thinking about it. And the way I did it was this. I started thinking about my athletic career with all the sports I played growing up and then professionally and all that. And I started to break it down from the confidence side. And also, like, when did I play well? What was going on? Like, I really dissected it. What was I thinking and saying to myself? Where there's certain actions I did, I would really think through, like, my whole pregame routine. Was there something in that was creating belief? Was there a thought process that created belief? And, what was I feeling? I can still remember moments before a game where I had prepared myself thoroughly, and I just knew. I knew I was screwed. I knew we were going to lose. I knew there was nothing I could do about it. I believed there was no way it could change. I felt it. I heard it, and then I did what everyone says. I kept yelling at myself, come on, Kenny, you got to believe in yourself. Come on, you can do this. Come on, right? Isn't that what we all do? We literally start yelling at ourselves. Come on, you can do this. Come on, think positive. Don't think about that negative stuff. Come on, Kenny, stop. Stop beating yourself up. Come on. You've done this in the past. You've been great. You've won awards. Isn't that what we do? Whether it's a business thing, marriage, a lot of people at the altar. Come on, you can do this. We start talking, right? And it hit me. That's the problem. The problem is that we're talking. The problem is that we're thinking. And every single person in this industry that I've ever heard, and I haven't heard, maybe I've missed something. I haven't heard everybody speak every word out of their mouth. So maybe you've heard somebody say something different or say what I'm about to say. I know I've never heard it after researching it a lot, but I could always miss something. But every single one of them prescribes that you need to change your thoughts. Well, ag me. Listen to what I just described. You've all had that exact same experience. You're screaming and yelling at yourself. trying to make yourself, you're talking positively, you're reading positively, you're writing positively. But what's the missing ingredient? You don't feel positive. Like that situation I described where certain games, I just knew, I felt it. And you listen to any athlete, you listen to any actor or performer or politician, pay attention when they describe how they conquered something in their life. They never once talk about their thoughts or what they were thinking. They describe how they felt. And I've never heard anybody talk about that. Belief is incredibly simple. This is all it takes to believe in yourself. Belief is when your feelings and your thoughts line up. That's it. That's all it is. Think of it. Your whole life, you've gone into a presentation, a performance, whether it's athletic or something artistic, whatever it is. You knew, you believed you were going to kill it. Why? Because you felt it. Like, I can feel it. There's this electricity running through your body. There's a smile on your face. There's a deep inner knowing. That's a feeling. And that's what everybody is missing. If you can't believe in yourself, it's because you can't feel it, not your thoughts. That's why I get so frustrated with everyone out there wanting you to think positive and talk positive. Gag me. Feel positive. Feelings, our whole life is based on what we feel. Yet, what have we all been taught about feelings? Don't have them. Don't talk about them. Don't share them. And by God, don't you ever deal with your feelings. Isn't that right? We're all supposed to hide our imperfections and our sadness and our pain. We're told, don't feel. And don't let anyone know that you feel off. Facebook is wonderful for it. Everyone's talking positive. Positive memes. Gag me, gag me, gag me. I see it all over. It's a lipstick on a pig. They're not addressing the right topic. And I see wellness coaches and health coaches and life coaches and business coaches and everybody screaming at you to talk and think positive. I'm not telling you not to do it, but belief and action and success only come when you feel it. You have to, it's a feeling process. It's not a thought process, because we can sit there all day long. I want you to do this. Whatever you have coming up this week, something that's important to you, I want you to spend the whole week thinking the way you want. And I guarantee you, as you walk into that event, you're going to feel something's off. You're going to see, or maybe, well, most people, when they, like, that's what I discovered. The reason I would be inconsistent in my athletic performance is because no one taught me how to regulate my feelings. No one taught me that I can actually shape my feelings because of what I said earlier. And so that's why I'd be inconsistent. If I felt right inside, literally, you could not beat me. I was gifted as an athlete when I felt it. I could not be beat. And you listen to any athlete in any sport, when they've had that superhuman game or superhuman moment, all they ever talk about is how they felt. That's the secret to believing in yourself. And so this week, I want you to pay attention. If you have something important, I want you to pay attention to the way you feel. And if you can't feel belief, then I'm going to teach you tonight how to create it, because that's the missing gap, not your thoughts, none of that. I mean, I always want you to talk and write and, speak positively about yourself. I don't want you to shame yourself. But It's learning how, when you do think and talk positive, how to generate the feeling that matches it. That's the key to success in life. Everything in life. You want to succeed in anything, it's feeling based. It's all it ever is. That's the single most important skill you need to succeed in life, is to feel what you want, not think it, because your thoughts are a byproduct of what you're feeling. And so that's the big misnomer in this industry, is everyone's wasting your time with thoughts. And so they write these thought stories of people who miraculously had belief. And what does it what happens inside of you? You feel better. It's a momentary proxy. See, that's what a lot of people in this industry do. They know the psychology of it. And so they create a proxy. That's why they use stories when they do all of this. And that's part of why I don't have as big of a following, because I don't, like, well, I don't want to say they manipulate you. That's too strong of a word. But they're using stories to engage you and pull you in emotionally so you feel good about them. And they won't give you the information that you need to succeed, but they've got you attracted to them because they've used, proxy stories and words to draw you in emotionally. And that's why you gravitate towards them. And that's why you can pay thousands and thousands of dollars to go to all their events and still be headed toward divorce, still be right where you are financially. Nothing's changed. And anyone mentions their name and you're like, oh my God, I love them, listen to them all day, every day, read everything. They're the best, they've changed my life. And yet your life has marginally improved. What they've learned to do is create words and thoughts as a proxy to engage you emotionally. And it's to their disservice to give you the complete answer, like I'm going to give you, because I'm going to challenge you. And that's something I'm going to say is, I should say this before every show. I'm going to talk about things that are going to challenge inherent beliefs you've had, feelings. Listen to what I'm saying. I'm going to challenge inherent beliefs, which are feelings you've had inside of you, probably since you were a child. And for many of you, that's going to be incredibly uncomfortable. Now, I don't expect you to absorb this and believe in it. In other words, shift your feelings to believe in it and accept it in just this 1 hour podcast. This takes time, just like the title of my book. It's a journey. It took me a long time to figure this stuff out. It took me a long time to figure out how to shift my feelings, and then a long time how to teach others to do it. This is a process. So I don't expect you to get it all tonight. I do expect you to be kind to yourself, but I do want to challenge you and ask you, are you willing to allow yourself the opportunity to hear some new information that will challenge those feelings and beliefs and will make you uncomfortable? And so basically I'm asking, are you okay with, I guess, not being okay for just a little bit? If you are, then this is the place you need to be. Because I'm going to talk about why you can't feel what you want, and then give you some tools on how to start shifting the way you feel, which will then line up with your thoughts so you can believe in yourself. Okay? But again, I'm not going to use the story proxy to suck you in emotionally, but leave you bankrupt with the skills and tools. Now, the converse to that is I challenge you intellectually and emotionally, which is very uncomfortable. And most people don't want to do that. It's a tougher sell. But that's why I was contemplating suicide. Nobody would talk about this stuff. No one would give me the answer. So I decided to be the one to give people the answer and talk about the topics that they don't want to talk about because they're They're not as feel good and salesy. What I talk about is much less manipulative, but it's more, well, I don't want to say helpful. That's unfair, because all of their stuff was helpful to me too. It's just further along the process. That's a better way of saying it. I encourage, like, I'd never tell anyone not to learn from all the other big name experts that are out there. I did too. They're a stepping stone, and we need all that information. But many of them leave out the final pieces that you need to turn your life around. And that's the gap I wanted to step into. So, okay. So let's get to it. We've established that belief is a feeling process, that the absence of belief means an absence of the ability to feel what you want in your life, whether that's belief in God, whether that's belief in a future potential partner, whether that's belief in your skill set in a performance or athletic, whatever it is. What's missing in your life is the ability to feel that belief. All right? There's several things that keep us from that. The first thing that keeps us from feeling that belief is our thoughts. Like I said, I went through it earlier. When we sit there and we feel like, that lack of belief, and we start screaming and yelling at ourselves to believe and talk positive and come on, we can do this. Listen to all of that anger and frustration. Well, what's the feeling associated with anger and frustration? Is, if you've watched my show a lot, you know that if you're ever angry or frustrated, anger and frustration only comes up when you're afraid. You are in white hot fear. Well, if you're in fear, can you believe? No. So the whole model you've been taught to create belief in yourself creates disbelief. It puts you in an emotional state where belief is impossible. That's why I call it the Nike philosophy. We've all been raised, come on, just do it, like the Gary Vaynerchuks of the world. Gary's heart is in the right place. He wants so badly for people to live a great life, but he screams and yells at them. He uses shame and anger. That's a limited fuel source. It always blows up on you. That's the societal model we've been raised. You listen to any successful person, listen to their life story, and they'll tell you about some sort of self-hatred, some sort of mistreatment in childhood, something like that. And they use that, they went through some sort of rejection, and they use that self-loathing, hate, anger, shame to go, I'll never let this happen to me. I'll show them. Well, that's why they commit suicide. That's why the addictions, they all fall apart once they make it there. Their lives are miserable because they've used a feeling source that is highly effective. Anger, shame, all of that negative stuff is incredibly effective. That's why we have it, because it can spur us to immediate, profound action. All right? But the continued use of it is what destroys us. And so the first thing to recognize is the way you've been taught to use thoughts to create belief actually create disbelief. And so I want to encourage you to stop the yelling and screaming and the ultra motivation. Like, there's some book out there, I can't remember the name of it, a Navy SEAL guy or Army, something like that. And he's talking about his life story, and ran a 100-mile marathon, and I'm exaggerating, I don't remember the details, but bones are breaking. He's all about pushing himself to unspeakable limits, losing weight, basically risking his life at every juncture to conquer the world. When I read the book, it broke my heart, because it's the same old line. I'm going to self-abuse to get me to achieve something. But if you read his book, he's filled with self-loathing. Because when you use that as a fuel source, that's all you create is a feeling of I'm never enough. And so his only answer to life is to destroy himself to succeed. And that's the model we've all been taught. And I teach my clients and the greatness groups and the book, I teach you exactly the opposite. And what happens is your journey to success is much shorter, much quieter, much easier, and very bereft of pain. You don't have to suffer like that. But everyone thinks we have to suffer to succeed. It's a false narrative, but it's because nobody wants to tackle the emotional explanation and content. And they've all stayed away from it because, let's face it, I mean, if you look at my posts and the things I do, I get a lot of views, but not many comments. Nobody wants to admit that they watch me and listen to me. They don't want other people to know that they struggle emotionally. That breaks my heart. But you see the other people where it's the very superficial stuff, everyone comments on that. It's safer emotionally. They feel safer. All right, so that's the first thing, is the way we talk to ourselves. The model we've been shown to create belief actually creates disbelief. Now, here's where I get to challenge your feelings and beliefs and really make yourself uncomfortable. The single greatest reason people cannot create belief in themselves is our lack of education and emotional development as a person and as a society. See, here's how life works. Everything we do is feeling based. And since none of our parents have ever taken a class on how to be a parent, they abuse us and hurt us in some fashion. And if you're out there going, oh no, I had a great childhood, that tells me how much denial you're in. Even if your parents had taken a class, they're human. They have done lots of things that were harmful and hurtful to you, not because they're bad people, but because they're human. And of course, they're going to do that. The other thing is, because of the lack of education, most people are completely unaware of what is abusive parenting. I sat with someone yesterday, and she's describing how she has a hard time looking somebody in the eyes, and gets incredibly sweaty and shuts down around people of authority and can't say no. Asked her one question about her mom. Her mom talks to her all day, every day. She's, in her 20s, living on her own, everything. But her mom is still running her life. She's never been, and she's completely unaware of how abusive her mother is. She thinks mom loves her. She really does. And see, that's the thing, is I sit with people and they have no clue how much abuse they've been through. Absolutely none. 67% of the population can't even feel. You ask them, literally, they've done surveys where all of these questions designed to determine if someone can feel, they're in touch with the way they feel. 67% of the population doesn't feel. They're that detached. And those are the ones that say childhood was great. They are completely shut down from it. They don't even know they're in pain. So here's what happens. Here's why pain and trauma keeps us from belief. When trauma happens, emotional trauma, physical trauma, psychological trauma, any type of trauma, what happens is it activates a protective mechanism. Okay? If a stressor is too much for a person to handle, it overloads our brain, our nervous system. And I'm going to talk in a minute about how the brain works so you understand this processing. So what happens is those circuits, it basically shut down and explode. Explode's the wrong term, but they can't process it. It overloads them and it halts the body. It stops the ability to think and process, and it instinctively turns on the fight, flight, or freeze response, which causes a traumatic energy explosion to be all of that emotional, what's the best way to say it? How can I draw a picture for you? Think of a water balloon, okay? You're filling it up, all right? And eventually what happens? It explodes. Well, that's what trauma does, whether it's sudden or it's the buildup of, little hurts, but it builds up and it finally explodes. The balloon cannot contain the emotional significance. The brain can't process it. So it explodes and halts the body. It causes this all of the energy from that explosion to be stored in your body, muscles, organs, tissue, all of that. Because that's what happens when we go into the fight or flight. It sends out this huge chemical release into our body, our muscles, to get it to run or be physically defensive, not emotionally defensive, physically defensive. Okay? So when we store that trauma in our tissue, it creates a disconnect from that part of the body to block the experience. Okay, like this is more a physical trauma. When you break your arm, okay, there's a disconnect. All right, the cells stop sending signals, try to stop sending. So there's a disconnect, so the brain can't process it. All right, it disconnects from that body to block the experience. The reason it does that is it's trying to defend you from recalling that traumatic memory. That's why most people think their childhood was great. And I'll ask them a couple of questions and all of a sudden they're like, oh my God. It's like, say it all the time on podcasts. I watch stories about serial killers and they'll say what a great childhood they had. And then all of a sudden they start talking about how mom was an alcoholic, dad beat them up. And I'm like, do you hear how you're minimizing all of this? It's what people do. It's fascinating. Like literally, I've had roundtable discussions with people about this, and they'll go around the table and describe their childhood and say nothing happened. But in the description of their childhood, all they talk about is how abused they were. And I'm like, did you hear what you just said? Oh, well, yeah, it wasn't that. That's that disconnect. I can't think about it. I can't feel it. I can't register it. Okay? That's why. Like I rile a lot of feathers on Facebook. The big new thing is CBD oil for stress and anxiety. Well, look, I don't care if you want to take pills or pot or CBD, whatever, for any health condition. But if you are, you're not addressing the cause. And so people that are very entrenched into their illness, because we get so much power when we're sick. Everyone, I mean, look, you post, give me some help with stress and anxiety. You'll get 200-300 people spewing about CBD oil and how to use pot and pills to overcome their problem. Well, the clinical definition of stress and anxiety is fear. It's an emotional condition. But nobody wants to deal with the emotion. So I'll post in there, man, some people get fired up. They do not want me to take their pot and pills from them. They love their pot and pills. They love their illness. Don't want to let this go. Now, there are many people who, because the trauma was so severe, they may have to use those things the rest of their life. I don't know. I'm not going to speak on the medical validity of it. What I do know is this. It is clinically proven. If you struggle with stress and anxiety, you have an emotional condition that is being untreated and you're masking it with pills, pot, and CBD oil. That's just plain fact. You can't argue with that. Do the research yourself. I did it. They're all emotional conditions from trauma. If you struggle with stress and anxiety and can't believe in yourself, it's because of trauma. Plain and simple. Nothing else. Unaddressed trauma. That is the single greatest reason you cannot believe in yourself. And I'm just going to keep saying it because your denial mechanism is going to go up. Remember what I said earlier? You're going to hear some things that are going to make you uncomfortable. Your amygdala is firing, going, no, don't want to hear this. Don't take away my pot and pills. Don't take away the way I've been avoiding my trauma from the past, the rape, the yelling, the screaming, whatever it is. Please don't make me face it. Society says I shouldn't face it. God, give me any other way to believe in myself but to deal with my trauma. It is your trauma. That is all it ever is. If you cannot believe in yourself, it is trauma-based. Nothing else. Flat out. Now, why is that? Well, it's because of how the brain works. The way the brain works is we process information through our thalamus. And all memories, I'm going to skip some steps. Our hippocampus is basically our memory center, okay? And in 2012, MIT discovered that, like, for centuries, I don't know, centuries, but for a very long time, science thought that the way we stored memories were, we stored them conceptually, like a picture in our brain, kind of like a file system, like at the library. There were, it was this massive library of all these books and pictures and experiences. And our brain would go running through the library and pull it out and go, bingo, here's your memory. That's how they thought our brain worked. It is MIT discovered in 2012. That's not how our brain works. The way our brain works is it stores our memory physically. It is a physical, and think of it, if anything is physical, what is it? It's a feeling. Our cells store feelings. Your memories are categorized and stored long-term, short-term, based on your feelings. And the heavier the emotional content, the more likely it is you will remember it, okay? Now, for severe trauma victims, they can do the opposite. Remember how I said how the brain creates a disconnect? It'll basically wrap itself up around that massive trauma, create this barrier to it so that you can't process it. That's why so many people that have come to me, there's a naturopath that sends clients to me. If the clients are willing to do the emotional work, most of them aren't. It's funny, she'll get in touch with me and she's like, you might get a call, like it's weekly. You might get a call from this person. They're struggling with this, and I know it's from their trauma, but they're not ready to do the emotional work. They want the pills and pot. They want anything. Please give me the magic pill from the doctor. Don't make me deal with my trauma. But the ones that do come to me, that do decide they're going to look at the emotions, they've recovered fully from what brought them to the naturopath in the first place. So that's why we get sick and hurt, because of the way our brain and body processes memory. We process it physically as a physical sensation. We recall it that way, all right? And so remember how I said in the beginning, sporting events, before a game, I could just feel something was off. What I didn't know, what I would have liked to have known, what I wish coaches knew back then and could teach me was what was happening is I was reliving a traumatic feeling. And that feeling was so dreadful, it gave me disbelief in myself. That's it. That's all that happens to you in a presentation or anything, is your trauma surfaces and it creates a feeling of disbelief. And you can scream and yell at yourself, but think of it, that just creates more trauma, right? If we hate ourselves or talk down to ourselves, that's a traumatic experience, which creates a bad feeling, right? So we're just compounding the earlier traumatic experience. That's what we're doing. So the lack of belief, if you struggle believing in yourself in any certain area, it's because of stored emotional trauma, emotional memories in your brain and body. And the only way out is they must be faced, addressed, overcome. You must learn to reshape those emotional feelings and that pain. That's it. I know, not the answer you wanted. You're hoping for some CBD oil or something else like that. And not to say, look, I take all that stuff. I hope it helps you. I think it's wonderful. I know the heart is in the right place. It's people who care deeply about helping others. But again, the medical community is slow to get on the bandwagon of emotions. It is changing. Like I said last week, I'm so happy to see Cigna Health, their commercials. They're running this whole commercial campaign now where they're telling all of their group members, hey, if you have to go see the doctor, make darn sure you talk to them about your emotions, because your emotions are what are creating your health condition. Like, finally, it's amazing that the medical community is actually willing to entertain that, because it really threatens their business. Think of the drug companies. Drug companies run medicine. And so if it's emotional, well, a drug company can't fix that. They need it to be something they can fix, because then you rely on them. The pot industry is the same. All of the medicinal industries are the same. Okay? You could say, I'm the same way. I need you to be sick and hurt. I guess that would be a fair thing. To keep my business, yeah, I would need that. But I also know the science shows everybody's massively broken and been through massive trauma, because we don't teach any of this stuff. That's why I'm doing this. Instead of the whole population going through trauma in childhood, what would happen if 3 to 5% of the population never experienced trauma in childhood? I wonder what would happen then. Don't know if it's possible, but at any rate. So all I know is the medicine doesn't attack the source, okay? It covers up the source, which can be wonderful. It can alleviate the symptoms and maybe make you live a more rich life, but you never reach your full potential because you're not growing and gaining the tools that you need that are necessary to generate the belief, which is what will create the relationship, the job, the family dynamics, everything that we all want, okay? So there's only one way out of this to create belief in yourself, and that's you have to go become an expert in your darkness, in your brokenness. And here's why. When you go become an expert in how imperfect you are and all the things you've suffered, and you reconcile it, what that gives you is self-forgiveness. And so when you do make a mistake in the future, or you do have a bad feeling, you can immediately turn it around. See, the reason you can't change your feelings, remember I talked earlier, the sporting events, I couldn't change the way I felt because I was filled with self-shame, loathing, hatred, all of that. When I went and became an expert in my darkness and reconciled how awful I am as a person, I know that's hard for a lot of people to admit, but it's so beautiful to know how awful I am. See, I'm free. You can call me anything, and I'm like, you're right. I do that. Isn't it wonderful? You see how absolutely messed up I am. I don't have to be ashamed of it anymore because I made peace with it. And that's why I can create belief in myself. And so that's what you're missing. If you can't look at every aspect of your life and have the exact same reaction I just showed you, then you need to go become an expert in your darkness and in your pain and your trauma. You have to see what's creating the emotions that have you not believing in yourself. You have to discover how the lack of self-esteem and the inability to accept yourself fully. And a lot of people go, well, I do. I hear that all the time, yet it drips off of them. They're 40 pounds overweight. It's like their whole life is a mess. Oh, I believe in myself. No, I have high self-esteem. It was wonderful that a lady, we had lunch yesterday, and she's a friend of a client of mine. And she was like, Kenny, a year ago, I would have told you I had total confidence in myself, high self-esteem, everything. She goes, I had no idea how much denial I was in. No clue. because nobody talks about this stuff. And then I finally started dealing with it, and now I see it. And that's most people. Most people are completely unaware of how out of touch they are with themselves, because they haven't done this work. And so anyway, so that's why you have to do it. You have to be able to admit to yourself exactly who you are, even the awful parts. You have to be willing to reconcile the pain and trauma that you've been through and make peace with it. If you don't, it resurfaces, because remember how the brain and body works. It stores your trauma in the cells. And so when a stressor occurs, an event of some sort, it releases those stressors. Your brain body locks up. You cannot be you. You are shut off from the full aspect and essence of you. That's how trauma works. That's why athletes cave under pressure. That's why, all of it. It's just their trauma, nothing else. So, how do you start dealing with your trauma? Well, that's like I said, my whole greatness movement groups are the whole process to overcome all of this stuff. I can't give all that information. It's too much information in 1 hour, but I want to give you at least some tips to walk away with so you can begin the process of discovering what you're feeling, what's causing it, and how to overcome it. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to go onto Google and I want you to type in feelings list. Thousands will come up. Doesn't matter which one you pick, something that has a good mix of both positive and negative feelings. And I want you to carry it around with you for the next week. And like my group members, when we do this, the homework is I give them this in the workbook. I think it's 5 times a day to check in and see what you're feeling. That's ideal, but maybe your schedule doesn't allow that. The point is several times throughout the day, check in, see what you're feeling. Maybe you just came out of a meeting and you're ticked off. Grab the list, circle or put a check mark next to the feeling. Your wife just calls you and says, God, you're handsome. Check off, man, I feel sexy. I feel loved. I feel appreciated. I feel happy. Whatever it is, start tracking what you feel. It is so common. When I give this homework to clients, they'll come back the next week with like 2 things checked off. They don't even know what any of the feelings feel like. They're that disconnected. Like that is normal. People are that disconnected. They don't know the difference between certain feelings. They don't even know they're feeling it. Like they could be yelling at me and I'd say, what are you feeling? And they'd look at the sheet. They couldn't even select anger. They don't recognize they're in anger or the many other levels of anger or other ways to describe it. So at any rate, do the best you can. Keep track of it. So the first step is start checking off your feelings. All right. After a week, you're going to see there's some consistent ones. This is a window into the trauma you felt and the experience and the feelings you felt in that moment. You're going to see there's 1 mark here, 2 here, 4 here, 8 here, 6 here, 7 here. There are going to be 3, 4, 5 feelings that come up over and over and over. And then you're going to start to realize before you go into an event where you have to have belief in yourself, you're feeling those 3 feelings. You're going to start to see the patterns. Okay. Now, the next step is once you start to become aware of what you're feeling, the next step is to start writing down what triggered it. What happened before the event that feeling came up, or if you were just sitting on the couch, like when it comes to anxiety and stress, people are especially anxiety. All anxiety is you're sitting there doing nothing and your trauma tries to release and you get racing heart, all of that. That's just a trauma response. Your body's freaking out. There's no stimulus. When it's anxiety, there's no stimulus. It's a stored trauma response that's releasing. And because you don't have the emotional skill set to deal with it or understanding of your trauma, you've never dealt with your trauma, you don't know what's happening. That's all anxiety is. It's undealt with trauma. Unless there's a massive miswiring of the brain. That's the only caveat, which is rare. Usually the misfirings of the brain are trauma related too, but there are times where it's not. But there are rare smaller cases where it was a brain issue that wasn't sparked by trauma. But I can't get into all that. I'll get diverted. At any rate, so I want you to start describing what events happened before and after. And then I want you to ask yourself, when was the first time I felt this feeling? And watch what comes up. Watch what comes up. It may be something from a week ago. It may be something from when you were 4 years old, 10 years old, 12 years old. But I want you to start asking yourself repeatedly, when was the first time I felt this? You're going to start unlocking the door to your trauma and what's keeping you from believing in yourself. Okay? I know that sounds really scary. It was scary for me when I had to go do this work too. What may help you is create a support network. Like one of the things I had to do is I had a friend, and every day we'd call and we'd share 3 feelings from the day. And we'd always ask no feedback. I would just say, well, like, let me see today. Today I felt peaceful. I went to have coffee at Starbucks and I sat outside in the sun and I felt peaceful. It was beautiful. Just the breeze. It was wonderful. I felt tired today. That was another thing. I felt tired, emotionally drained. That was another thing I felt today. Okay. So that's an example of, maybe you need a feelings partner, someone to talk to and share that stuff, just so you get used to expressing it. Just that will start releasing some of the stored trauma. Okay. The other thing I want you to do is I want you to get a piece of paper and I want you to write down what your needs and wants are. I've talked about needs and wants before. I'll give you a quick overview. A need is things like food, clothing, shelter, money, things we need to survive. Where in your life are you not meeting those needs? Okay. Are you not feeding yourself? That's something I will still struggle with. Do you only have, have you not bought clothes in 3 years? Are you meeting your needs and wants? Okay. Start making a list of what your needs are. Make a list of what your wants are. Now, wants are things that bring you joy. See, we have to start changing the way you feel about yourself. And so we have to start bringing joy into your life. But see, parents steal our joy. We have to do what they need and want. And so most people don't even know what their needs and wants are. I had a conversation with a woman, 42 years old this week, has no clue what she wants to do with her life. Talked to her about her childhood. Parents ran her whole life. She has no clue who she is or what she wants. So common. So common. If you don't know what your wants are, that tells you how much trauma, and that's prevalent. So wants are things like a Coke. Like I love Coke. It brings me joy. I love clothes. Love clothes. Brings me joy. The key is when your wants, the way to go meet a want, you have to make sure it doesn't sacrifice a need. Like I would love to have 5 houses across the world. Well, if I were to pursue that, I couldn't live in any of them. I don't have that much money right now. So in other words, if you go pursue a need, because we need shelter, if you go pursue a want, something that brings you joy, but okay, let me see if I can bring up a better example. You want to go on a vacation, but if you go on a vacation, you can't pay the mortgage. Your want sacrifices your need. Okay. And so this becomes destructive and you'll belittle, shame, destroy yourself emotionally. The idea is your wants are meant to lift you up, and they will lift you up as long as they don't go against your needs or put your needs in jeopardy. Okay? So I want you to make a list of that and start pursuing your wants that don't put your needs in jeopardy. All right? The other thing I want you to do is make a list of your negotiables and non-negotiables. Look in your life and look where you're putting up with things that don't work for you. Like me, if I had people that do a lot of pot, I just can't have it in my life. I know how destructive it is. I know it's a false narrative of what it is. I'm the same way with drinking. Someone having a drink or two, big deal. It doesn't bug me. But someone who has to drink every day or weekly or whatever, I can't have that in my life. So those are non-negotiables for me. All right. What are yours? And where in your life are you going against your non-negotiables? And how does that tie into your original trauma? If you were raped, especially, some sort of physical, emotional abuse or trauma, you're probably allowing behavior that goes against your needs and wants, your negotiables and non-negotiables, because of unprocessed, undealt with trauma. That's why it's important that you do those things. We're just about to wrap up here. There's so much to all of this, but I want to give you at least a little bit. The last thing I want you to do to start shifting the way you feel is, as I say it all the time, feelings or affirmations and accomplishments. Wake up each morning, write down 3 things you love about yourself. And the key is the feeling it generates, not the words, not that you say, I love my legs. When you say it, you think, I want you to feel inside your body what it feels like to love your legs. See, do you see how I just did that for myself? Like I do. I love I have gorgeous legs. I played pro hockey. I have like big, strong legs. They look great. You can see the joy in me when I say it. I truly believe that about myself. Now, you may not think they're beautiful. Well, that's okay. You have your own perception of what great legs look like. Well, I love mine. That's the feeling I want you to draw on. What about yourself? And it doesn't have to be physical. The thing I'm most proud of in my life is my willingness to not only share and expose how absolutely awful I am. That's my greatest gift. And that I wake up every day looking for my imperfections, because the more I do it, the more peace and happiness I get. That's my single greatest gift. I even dedicated the part in the book, I dedicated to myself, and that's what I wrote. That's my greatest accomplishment in life. And someone asked me once, what do I want on my gravestone? It's that. I became an expert in admitting and seeing how perfectly imperfect I am and made peace with it. That's my greatest accomplishment in life. So you can see the way I feel about it. So that's what I want you to do with affirmations. Same thing with accomplishments. At the end of the day, what did you accomplish? Did you watch this? Did you eat? Did you shower? Did you go to work? Did you go for a walk? Like tons of things. And again, attach the feeling to it. That's the key. How do you feel? Okay. So thank you for all of you that hung in there and face the discomfort of seeing the truth about yourself, that what's keeping you from believing in yourself is your pain and your imperfections and your unwillingness to look at it and become an expert in it. It doesn't make you a bad person. It's because we have a society that promotes not dealing with it. It's the whole reason I started the greatness movement. It breaks my heart that most of the world doesn't want to do this. Yet anyone who's found peace in their life, that's how they did it. And I'm going to prove it to you. It's even spiritually based. And I think this is appropriate considering it's Easter Sunday. What I'm telling you to do, if you are a spiritual person, is biblically and spiritually based. Think about it. This is very deep. So this will show you that even in spirituality and religion, the only answer to belief is to become an expert in your darkness and your imperfections. And let me prove it to you. In whichever way you believe in a God, every religion believes the same thing, that God is perfect, right? Everything God has ever done is perfect, right? Never made a mistake. Isn't that correct? That's the assumption, or that's the belief. God is omnipotent. Everything in the whole universe is his creation and it's all perfect. Okay, well, who created the devil? I said this the other day and the person said, well, the devil's an archangel. Well, I thought God created everything, right? So God created the archangel, the devil, right? So what's the devil? Darkness. So what's the devil really? If everything comes from God, the devil is God's darkness, right? Even God has darkness. And what's the reconciliation? When they come together. See, God even can't be perfect unless he faces his darkness. He, she, it, whatever it is you want to say. It's biblical. Look at Jesus on the cross, the perfect human being who loved and worshiped God and believed like no other, right? That's, if you're a follower of Jesus, you know, many religions are. I know Judaism, others aren't, don't believe it. But for those of you that believe in Christ, what happened on the cross? Jesus faced his own darkness. He didn't believe in God. God, how dare you? Why do you forsake me? He lost belief. He came face to face with his own darkness. And once he saw it, he made peace and he was able to give himself to the cross. Your only salvation in life is to face your darkness. That's it. So if you want to believe in yourself, go become an expert. If you don't know how to do it, join the Greatness Movement. Join one of the groups. Go to www.thegreatnessmovement.com. Get a free copy of my book. And if you want, send me an email. And whether you want to join the online groups or whatever, you know, whichever way, let me know. Whether the in-person or online groups. But that's your only way out. And it's a biblical principle as well. All right, I'm going to leave you with that deep thought for the night. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. Please share the show if you think this can help other people. I'd really appreciate it. And as I always say every night when I do the show, remember, whenever we judge, blame, or criticize anyone, all we're ever doing is talking about a piece of our darkness that we haven't faced, because we can't see anything in anyone else that isn't operating in us. But on the flip side, when you see greatness in somebody or something, the only reason you can see it is because it's your greatness. You're just seeing yourself. Now, if you can't believe that, if you can't feel that greatness, then the Greatness Movement is for you. Please join us. Please take the step to accepting and believing your greatness. All right, everyone. Have a great night. Happy Easter. We'll see you next week.
I can do anything. I can reach any goal today. I can do what I want. I can be what I want to be.
Coach on Fire Radio.